Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Parenthood Uncut, where I'm bringing you some life updates from my trip in Greece. So I'm currently in my home office, i.e. bedroom, in a small town on the south of Greece called Polythra, and that's where my mum's actually from. So we've spent a lot of years holidaying here. It's just beautiful. It's a little village and it's just adorable. So it's been really good actually for me to find an opportunity to sort of slow down. I think in my last episode I was talking about the fact that I still felt a bit wired, and now finally I feel like I've been able to slow down. And it's interesting when your body slows down, you sort of, all of a sudden I'm just exhausted all the time. So it's almost like I've allowed my body to fully relax. I should mention to those of you who haven't listened into one of our Parenthood Uncut episodes before, this is raw audio that I'm bringing you. So you'll have to forgive me if it's not perfect. We don't get it edited. I just want to bring you some live updates, and they're sort of mini episodes that I'm bringing you while I travel. Okay, so let's get into it. Today I want to talk about, would you leave your kids with a foreign babysitter? Now, I feel like this is pretty controversial because I think people have strong opinions either which way. I'd like to give you a little bit of an insight into what we experienced on our trip only a few days ago. So for us, we actually came to Greece because my cousin from Melbourne was getting married here on a beautiful island called Sifnos. And we didn't know anyone on that island, but we did know that we would need a babysitter for the reception, for the wedding reception. Bringing two toddlers who were boys who were just frenetic half the time to a reception would have meant that we would not have enjoyed ourselves. I mean, we would have been running after them the whole time. They would have then been exhausted. We just, you know what it's like. It's never quite the same when the kids are with you. So of course there was a lot of stress on both Jules, my husband, and my part around what the hell we're going to do with the kids, particularly for the reception. We ended up getting a babysitter, and a bit about our experience. So we asked around months before we came to Greece. We were staying in an Airbnb. We asked our Airbnb host. He said there was literally no one available, that it's a small island and I guess everyone was busy. And so we were a little bit panicked. About a week before we came to Greece, the Airbnb host said that he was speaking to their neighbour, and their neighbour has a 15-year-old daughter who was willing to sit with the kids if we needed her. So of course I was a bit skeptical. Oh God, like, a neighbour, she's 15, she's basically a child. Do I feel comfortable leaving my toddlers with a 15-year-old? But look, ultimately what we did was we always put the boys to sleep before we go out. We're quite well versed when it comes to nannies and babysitters. In Melbourne, we have them often when we want to sort of socialise as a couple. So, but what we do is we always put the boys to sleep ourselves, close the door, night, and then we head off, and the babysitter just sits downstairs and watches Netflix and just makes sure that they're okay. But as our little one, Noah, who is 3, is getting older, he's actually understanding and getting a vibe when it's time for us to leave the house. So he'll often kind of, we can't get changed fully in our evening wear until we've put them to sleep. Because if he even sees me in a different top or a dressy dress, he'll straight away say, "Mum, where are you going? Where's Dad going?" So that's been something that we were mindful of, particularly for this trip. We said, all right, well, if we're going to leave him with a complete random, how are we going to do this? And we have to just pull out all the stops around, the best way to prepare for this. So we decided, going back to the trip, okay, look, we're happy to meet with this person who's 15 years old, and we'll sort of meet her during the day on the first day that we arrive. The first event for the wedding was that evening. So we met her. When I first saw her, I was like, oh my goodness, she's such a child. But then she came into our home from next door. She, read some Greek books to the boys. My boys are learning Greek as well, and she could only pretty much speak Greek. And we sort of were like just sort of getting the boys used to her. We kept saying, oh, yeah, Penelope, she's a friend, we love Penelope, blah, blah, blah. So they could sort of feel the vibe as though she was a familiar person. I guess what got me over the line with even considering having her come over at all is I felt as though I could trust the Airbnb host, because I feel like that they've got a lot on the line if something goes wrong with the recommendation that they've made. They also were like a super host, so I felt as though I could somehow trust them. I also, when we arrived, we saw the family next door. We saw we knew a bit about the dad. He has a boating business out here in Sifnos. And so, we saw the dad, we saw a few cousins, and they holiday in Sifnos every year. So they were all sort of it was a bit of a family environment next door. So we thought, okay, at least they're locals to the area. And I feel like to some extent they gave us a bit more comfort as well. And I guess it was just like, we're going to meet her and see what our gut feel was. So yeah, when we met her, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a child. However, she seems so sweet and innocent. I don't feel as though, gut was telling me, you can trust her. And I don't feel as though anything could go too wrong. So it's always a risk, right? So we introduced her. As I said, she played for about 15 minutes with the boys. Then she left. That evening, we didn't get ready, actually. We got the boys organised, dinner, bottles, sleep, put them to sleep, and it's as though Noah just knew. He was like, nah, something's up. Put him to sleep, then we start getting ready. Of course, he comes out of the room. What's going on? Where are you going? And I had sort of said to him during the day, actually, after he met Penelope, our babysitter, I'd said, look, if mum and dad are not here at night, it's going to be Penelope's going to be here. And she's just like, and I reeled off some other babysitters that we've had in Australia. So she's just like Charlotte and Georgia and all the girls that look after you when mummy and daddy go out and have a little dinner. And, mummy and daddy will always come home. And so he said, okay. So he's like, Penelope's like Georgia. I'm like, yeah, exactly the same. So no need to get scared. She's one of our friends. And if you see her at nighttime because you wake up, she'll just say, okay, pamiya ipno, in Greek, which means, come on, let's go to bed. And she'll do pat, and she'll give you your water, and then she'll leave the room. Okay, so that's what you will do. And so I'd sort of kept saying that throughout the day after we met her, and he sort of kind of got it. So anyway, so he comes out in the evening. We're trying to get ready. Where are you going? Next minute, Penelope comes walking through the door, and I'm like, damn it, he's seen her now, so he's going to know something's up. So thankfully, at that point, Charlie was already sleeping, my 2-year-old. He would be a lot harder to get over the line. If he saw we had left, he would have just been in tears. He's not quite at the age where he gets it. So we ended up saying, okay, Penelope, Noah, you can read one book together. He was all excited. Oh, yay, I don't have to go to bed. And basically, of course, a bit of an interruption now. This is a live recording. But anyway, this is what it's all about when we go live and we don't edit. So he was all excited that he didn't have to go to sleep when we told him he had to go to sleep, and we were going to allow him to stay up to read a book. And at that point, he thought Penelope was his best friend. So, and I also wonder, because we've always had the nannies and babysitters, whether he's kind of somewhat accustomed to other people being around, so it's not such a big stress. I think families who perhaps haven't maybe exposed their children to a lot of other, foreign people, etc., may find that a little bit of a harder transition. But for us, it was okay. So we got all ready. He's all happy on the couch, reading a book with Penelope, and off we went to the event. Thankfully, the event on the first night was literally 2 houses down from where we were staying. So we were staying at quite a cosmopolitan area opposite the beach. It was a little home, and literally right up next to us were all the restaurants. So 2 shops down, off we went, and we enjoyed our evening. But what we did do is we knew that she was young, this girl. We knew that Noah was up. So within about half an hour of being at the venue, we walked back. We opened the door, and Noah is still up with Penelope. Noah's like, looks at us sheepishly, and I'm like, didn't we say 1 book and bed? And he's like, oh, okay. I was talking to Penelope, so he's sort of milking it for what it's worth. And then I said to her in Greek, okay, time for him to go to bed. So it was okay. We actually left. We came back an hour later. He had woken up, but she was able to put him to sleep. Then we thought, oh, great, this is perfect, easy as transition. So we're at the bar enjoying ourselves. It's at about 11:30 at night, and I have 2 missed calls from Penelope, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what has happened? She said, I called her, and she said, can you please come now? Noah's a bit upset. So I'm like, God, okay, here we go. So we walked 2 shops down, which was great. 5 minutes, we're there. And as we opened the door, she said, oh, it's fine. I managed to get him to sleep. So all good. So as I said, in a way, it was a great sort of training ground for what we needed because the next night was going to be a little bit more difficult, which I'll go into. So she sort of got her mojo. Noah sort of felt comfortable, and we weren't called back in, and we got home at like 12:31, 1 o'clock, and yeah, he'd fallen asleep. So no distress there. The next night was actually the night of the wedding. So we were a little bit more cautious because we were actually the reception was going to be kind of along the beach, about a 15-minute walk from where we were staying. So still walkable, but not next door. So if anything were to go wrong, we were a little bit more cautious around how we were going to deal with that. But anyway, all of the next day I was like, oh, you like Penelope? She's your friend. How good's Penelope? Yeah, she's like Georgia, the babysitter at home. Just kind of reiterating that message over and over. At that point, during the day, we'd seen her out on the beach with her cousins. She's waving to us. We'd said hi to her dad. So again, this is kind of bolstering our comfort around having this random person look after our two most precious people. So the boys were actually in the wedding, our little boys. So, it was a bit of an afternoon, a pretty full-on afternoon of photos, and they were little page boys. It was very sweet. So it was quite a full-on experience for them, being part of it. But we ended up doing the photos and everything at both villas, the brides and the groomsmen, and that was fine. And then we go to the church. Now, the church was basically surrounded by water. Like, there was only this one little path that led you to the church, and the whole church was surrounded by water. So what does little Noah do? As soon as we get out of the bridal car, he charges for the cliff. And I'm like, oh my God, see, this is why in the evening I could not have my child with me, because I can't be trying to dance and there's water and there's, it's just too hard, right? So anyway, that gave me even more comfort that, yeah, I've done the right thing getting a babysitter for tonight, because this is like hectic. I'm not even really enjoying myself because I feel like I'm just running, trying to keep my children away from the cliff face, and trying to keep them alive at this point. And funnily enough, we didn't even take a family photo during this wedding, because I just, what it's like when you're with kids, it's all about them. Yeah, like, there's my sisters who are, both don't have children, and they're, snap, snap, snap. And I didn't even notice they were taking photos, to be honest. The next day I went, oh my goodness, we didn't even take a family photo. So it's like such a different experience when you're with children, and you just want to sort of keep them comfortable and alive and not falling off a cliff face. So anyway, the church reception happened. We all hop in a bus. They drop us back to where we were staying so we could drop the boys off. The bus continues on to the reception with the other guests. So we get home. It's probably 8 o'clock at night. The boys are pretty wired from the event, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I need them to simmer ASAP. Like, Penelope's coming soon. I need them fully asleep, because I was a bit nervous again about the distance that we would be going, that evening to the venue. So anyway, so we feed them, get them in bed. It's 8:30. I'm like, great. Babysitter gets in at 9. I reckon we've got half an hour buffer to get them to sleep. Fantastic. They had obviously realised, because we were still in our wedding gear, we didn't take it off when we put them to bed. Noah realised something was up, and I'd said to him, it's fine, if we're not here, Penelope's here. So he started thinking, oh, well, if Penelope's coming, I can stay up. So guess what? I don't want to sleep. So we kept going in and out, the next half an hour, trying to put them to sleep, and then eventually he just kept coming out. Then it's, Penelope came, he told her to sort of hide in another room just so that he didn't see her, because he would get too excited to see her and wouldn't want to go to sleep. And ultimately, we ended up staying in the house till 10:30, so 2 hours of in and out, in and out, in and out. The reception had started. Good thing with the Greeks, they don't even start their main meals till like midnight, so we knew that we weren't going to miss out on too much food. But, we're there like, oh my gosh, we're meant to be at this wedding like 2 hours ago. This is ridiculous. So eventually we got to a point where we felt as though the boys were sleeping, and off we went to the reception. We get there, the reception is surrounded by water, so there's crashing waves. It was beautiful, crashing waves up to where the bridal table was, like just stunning. But I thought to myself, again, there is just no way I could have had my boys here. They would have run for the water. And in Greece, it's not like OH&S style Australia where there's like barricades and, glass, screening and stuff to prevent you from falling off a cliff. It's just all open here. So even more of a reason to, keep your children, within eyesight or not at the venue at all. So then we noticed that the flower girls, so there were only 2 other children at the wedding, and they were the flower girls. They were there at the venue, and I thought, they're 2 little girls, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I don't know how their parents did it. Later on in the evening, we spoke to the parents. Both girls were asleep on the chairs, and we said, my God, how did you do that? Like, how did you bring them? And they said, look, we actually had a babysitter organised, and then everyone's opinions got in the way. So it's actually interesting to divert. I put up on Instagram a question to our community around what was some of your biggest challenges traveling with toddlers. And a few comments actually came up around the same theme of people's judgments. That kills me. And I so get that. So with this family, they were like, babysitter's booked. We're enjoying our evening as a couple. We don't know the babysitter, but we feel comfortable. They came recommended. That's that. And then next minute, all the family, oh, how do you know these people? Oh, what if the babysitter's this? And what if you can't trust them? And and they started putting doubts in their mind. You should bring your children. You don't just leave them with a foreign person. We're in a different country. How do you know? What if something goes wrong? What are you going to do then? And eventually they ended up just succumbing to the feedback and just went, stuff it. It's not even worth it. If we leave our children with a foreign babysitter, we're going to feel guilty all night. The whole family is going to be disgruntled. So we're just going to bring them. I also wonder if there's a difference between girls and boys. So these girls were nowhere near as hyper as our boys during the day. Like, you know what boys are like, you just can't keep them still, whereas the girls can kind of sit and colour in and they're a little bit more tame. So, that was probably to their advantage as well. But yeah, so they brought them with them. And on that judgment piece, I mean, I've felt that a few times throughout the trip. Like, we'll be waiting for a boat. There's water everywhere. I'm sitting there going, I need to keep my kids still. So they've got the iPads on, at the boat terminal, and then and they're sitting there like glued to their screens. It's the only way I can keep them quiet while we wait for the boat to arrive. And you can sort of just see the glances. And maybe I'm just overthinking it, but I'm sort of like, yeah, mate, what are you looking at? Like, yeah, they're on the iPads. You try to tame a 2 and 3 year old and try to keep them alive in this environment. Like, so yeah, it's just interesting, that judgment piece. I certainly have felt as well during our trip. But ultimately, so at the reception, everything was going well. I was like, yes, freedom, we're dancing, we're having a great time. Then there are 4 missed calls on my phone that I hadn't noticed. And I was like, far out. Here we go. So pick up the phone, thankfully, because it was probably about a 20-minute gap from the last missed call to when I realised. Penelope was on the other line saying, it's okay. Noah at one point woke up pretty hysterical and he wanted you, but all good. I managed to get him back to sleep. And I was like, oh, thank God, that's what I wanted to hear. And then soon after, Jules ended up going home anyway, and I wasn't far off from him. And yeah, it was all okay. So, and what was actually interesting was the following night, it's almost like because we had been out 2 nights in a row, Noah really struggled to fall asleep because he kept getting up being like, are you still here? Are you still here? Not that he was like traumatized by the experience at all, but I think from his perspective, it was, well, if you're not here, then I want to stay up, So it was interesting. So look, that was our experience with the babysitter. She was great. And I guess, yes, it is a risk, absolutely. But there is no way we could have had the enjoyable time that we did at the reception, where we finally slowed down after a day of feeling super heightened and making sure our kids weren't falling off cliffs and all the other things that come with parenting. It was really nice to be able to just slow down and be a couple for a couple of hours, just the 2 of us, and have some level of comfort that, yeah, okay, we've known our babysitter for like 24 hours, but I feel like there's enough signs there that are going to make us feel comfortable with the idea of leaving our children with her. So look, everyone's different. As I said, the other couple from the wedding opted out on having a babysitter. Would we do it again? Look, circumstantial. I think it used to be a lot easier. We've done another Europe trip where Noah was 7 months old. It was actually for our wedding, and we had like a 3-day party. It was much easier when he was a baby because he didn't get it. So we'd put him to sleep, close the door. If he did wake up, babysitter just put a little bottle in his mouth and he fell back asleep. So I have to say it probably is a little bit more challenging with toddlers because they get it. But familiarising them with the person that you're going to leave with is absolute key. The other thing I remember seeing in Sifnos as well, I feel like it was quite an affluent island, and you'd see a lot of foreign families with the au pairs or the nannies with them, and I was like, damn you, that is such an excellent idea, because the parents are just like chilling on the beach and the au pair's like running after the toddler, and I'm like, oh God, that is the life better. So, options if you can afford, and if that's your vibe. We didn't have the opportunity to have someone with us 24/7, although we are very fortunate that we are traveling in some instances with families, so they're able to sort of give us a bit of reprieve as well. So that's another option if you are considering traveling and you want to have a little bit of couple time as well, perhaps bringing a family member along with you, or your parents or your sisters or whatever, or brothers, so that you can have a few moments together if you don't want to opt for the babysitter front. So that's basically our experience to date when it comes to babysitters. I'd be super keen to hear what your thoughts are as well. So I'll throw something out on Instagram, on our stories, just get your opinions as to, what you've experienced too. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe and leave us a review. The more people that hear about the pod, the more we grow. Also, feel free to share this with a friend if you feel it might support them too. Until next time.